We can have symptoms like long COVID symptoms without actually even ever having COVID, which is really interesting. There's a lot of research on that people are testing
Wow.
positive for long COVID without ever even having COVID. So it shows you that your brain is so powerful as to be able to present symptoms to you in the absence of something tangibly going on. Now, that doesn't mean anyone's making it up. To be very clear, like that doesn't mean anybody's making these symptoms up.
So you wake up almost every day in pain. You've seen every specialist, you've tried every treatment under the sun, and still no answers, no relief. It's exhausting and it's isolating, and it can start to feel like there is something deeply wrong with you. But here's the truth. In the vast majority of cases of chronic symptoms, you are not broken and you're not out of options, because what most people, even most doctors, don't yet realize is that chronic symptoms like pain and fatigue and so many others aren't just body problems. They're brain and nervous system issues, and that changes everything. If you're new here, I'm Raelan Agle, and this is the space where we cut through the confusion around conditions like ME/CFS and Long COVID and so many others, and we share what actually helps people recover, straight from lived experience and from the latest neuroscience. And today's guest is one of the most respected voices in this field. Daniel Lyman is a psychotherapist and a founding member of the Pain Psychology Center in Los Angeles, California, and is now the director of the Mind Body Therapy and Coaching Center in Portland, Oregon, where he's joining us from today. Daniel brings a rare combination of lived experience, clinical experience, real world insight, and global impact. He's worked with clients on 6 continents to help them resolve chronic pain, anxiety, and beyond. You might know him from seeing his work in the Curable app or in Psychology Today, but today he's here with us talking about why chronic symptoms aren't just a body problem, it's a brain and a safety reaction. And the good news is that that can change. That is reversible. So let's dive in. Daniel, could not
Raylan,
possibly be more excited to have you here. Thanks
that's
for
very
doing
kind of you.
this.
I'm very excited to be here too. Thank you for having me. Hopefully, we'll have some fun here.
Yeah, I was telling you off camera how excited I was all weekend leading up to this and telling my husband, I said, no pressure, but I got a rock star here today.
I'll tell my husband. He'll be like, "Oh, a rock star, please." That's
Oh, the
hilarious.
stories our husbands get.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So I know there's so many topics that we can and will do a deep dive into, but for all the people that are just showing up and learning about this for the first time, or for the many of us that are still trying to wrap our heads around this, what does our brain have to do with symptoms and long COVID and chronic pain and our nervous system? And everyone has a different way of explaining it. So I would
Yeah.
love if you could just tell me from your experience, your research, your understanding, what on earth is going on here?
Would you like me to speak specifically to chronic fatigue or just more broadly? What would be helpful, do you think, for your audience?
Our audience faces chronic fatigue syndrome, which includes, every symptom under the sun
For
and
sure. Oh yeah.
beyond, and long
Hmm.
COVID and chronic
Hmm.
pain and POTS and MCAS, fibromyalgia.
Okay,
So,
I'll speak to it all.
yeah.
And all of those diagnoses that you're speaking about, to be clear, are things that fall under the category that me and my team and a lot of us in the somatic therapy world work with. That is, those are all very familiar diagnoses here. And you said, a lot of us have different ways of explaining it. And to be honest with
Mhm.
you, I explain it a little bit different every single day, depending upon who I'm talking to, because the neuroscience around why this happens in our body and what is going on is developing. That's not, we do know a lot, but we don't know
Mhm.
everything. Understanding the brain is very complicated, and how the brain operates and why the brain creates these physical manifestations in our body is a complicated thing to explain. So I'll try and simplify it. And let me see. I'm going to try on a new spiel here, because again, I update it, and I've like your book. You said you will. That's feels like okay. It was 6 years ago. I've got more to say now. You've learned some new stuff. Same here.
Mhm.
Every year I do this work, I learn more, which is
Mhm.
wonderful, because it helps me get a different perspective on this. And it also only really affirms the work that I've been doing for a long time here. So, just in brief, the brain and the body are not separate entities. So, for us to think that they are, and for us to think of them as binary, meaning separate from each other, is kind of foolhardy. They don't exist without each other. There's literally no existing in our bodies without our brain, and the brain cannot function without the body. So our existence, our entire being, is a melding of the brain and the body. And the neuroscience demonstrates that our body is constantly manifesting symptoms or sensations, or however you want to describe them, but I oftentimes say symptoms or sensations, uh, based on the state that the brain is in. And when the brain is in an agitated state or an anxious state or a fearful state, it can manifest certain symptoms that feel completely unrelated to that state, but it can do that as a warning signal to us. It's warning us that something is off, something is wrong. And oftentimes we interpret that as something wrong in our body, but it's actually something potentially wrong in our mind. And that's not to say something's broken. It's just we might be under a lot of stress, or we might be having a lot of anxiety, or we might, as was the case with me a long time ago, we might hate our job. And my body just slowly started shutting down because my brain was trying to tell me, you don't like this, quit doing this. So there's a lot of different ways that these, or reasons why these symptoms show up, chronic symptoms, that is. But they all come under this, they almost always come under this umbrella of, okay, what's feeling wrong in our brain? And actually, a better word than wrong is unsafe. What is feeling unsafe in our brain? How is that spiel?
That was a big question, I realize. I always take the
Yeah,
people who really know their stuff. I'm like, "I'm not easing you into this, just
yeah,
all to us
you
in a
totally.
nutshell."
I can get even more scientific if we want. I can get more into the neuroscience if we want, but that's just kind of broadly speaking is we're finding lack of safety in the brain and it's causing symptoms or sensations in our body.
I realize I skipped over something, and something I'm sure our listeners and viewers would love to know is how did you end up sitting here doing this work?
Who am
Why?
I?
Yeah, so few people are knowledgeable on this topic. So how did you end up doing this work you do and knowing things that so few people know?
Well, fortunately, there are a lot more of us that know it now than when I started doing this work. But in brief, my story is, I had my own fair share of chronic symptoms. The big one that I talked about a lot publicly is like migraines. I had some pretty bad migraines when I was working at a job that I really didn't like. And I found some healing in some various ways. A lot of it was mind body healing. Looking back at the time, I didn't really realize what I was doing. But anyway, that's I went to grad school to become a therapist, and while I was in grad school, I became friends with a professor of mine named Alan Gordon, and he and I hit it off. And he, before I graduated, he said, "Do you want to start a group therapy practice with me, focused on helping people overcome chronic symptoms?" And I said, "That sounds great. I have experience in this, overcoming my own chronic symptoms. Let's start this center." So we started what was called the Pain Psychology Center, and it was a place where we were developing new therapeutic modalities to help people overcome chronic pain and chronic symptoms. And I worked there for a number of years. Then I went off on my own, and now I'm the executive director of a place called the Mind Body Therapy Center, which is a group therapy practice where we help tons of people in various dealing with various chronic symptoms. And also, a lot of our team members are involved in research as well, because I love doing the research aspect of it. So I was lucky enough to just be part of a research team that was using what's called pain reprocessing therapy to help certain people overcome back pain. So I've been doing that research for the last almost year or so, which was quite fun. So that's the brief down and dirty version of why I'm here and why you're talking with me now. I've been in this field for 15 plus years, and I really like the community, and I really like doing this work, and I love helping people feel better because I don't know, selfishly it feels really good.
So what I'm hearing is you essentially created the Bible that we've all been following these last few years. I'm fangirling over here. I'm
No,
like, I
that's
had this professor named Alan
very kind
Gordon,
of
and
you.
we created this thing called pain reprocessing therapy, and it's what we're all studying and what we're all following.
I did not create that Bible. No, there is a team of people. To be clear, there are lots of people that were all
Co-created.
contributing. Yes,
Co-created.
absolutely. There's,
Yeah.
in the early days of the Pain Psychology Center, we were all sitting around a room throwing out ideas of like, maybe this would
Wow.
work, maybe this would work. And then eventually kind of became tested and researched. And that's where we're at now.
Absolutely
I just feel very
incredible.
lucky I jumped on the right train at the right time, is all it is. And I just happen to be really
Wow.
enjoying this train ride.
So I think a lot of us, so, there's people watching, listening that are very at various stages of understanding and knowing. Some of the people in this community are some of the most knowledgeable people on the planet. They could probably have a conversation with you about neuroplasticity all day long, whereas
I
others,
love neuroscience.
understandably, as do I, I'm fascinated, can't stop learning. But I think where some of the disconnect happens from what I'm hearing from people is that, okay, we learn some of the science, we understand, we say, I get it, I'm on board. I'm telling my brain and body that everything's safe and fine. I'm getting all these principles, but I don't get that what that means on any given Tuesday. So I guess like I'm wondering, what does it look like when you work with clients? How do we actually put these principles and this information, this research into practice so that people can start feeling better?
Yes, that's a great question because like all this abstract talk about neuroscience is actually really not that helpful when we're dealing with pain or symptoms or fatigue, whatever we're dealing with. People talking neuroscience to us feels irritating. At least that's the way it was for me. I was like, what the heck are you talking about? Like I can't get out of bed. Like just help me now. So it's a great question, and we break it down fairly simply when working with people. And one of the first place we starts is a reaction to whatever sensations people are experiencing in the body. We start working on that. So when we have a sensation in the body, the way we react to it, the way we think about it, the way we physically respond to it, informs the likelihood we will have that sensation again and informs the intensity in which we'll have that sensation again. Quick anecdote that I've used a lot of times. As a kid, I was terrified of spiders. I just thought spiders were the scariest things in the entire world. And I lived still kind of do, but like next to the woods in Oregon, there are spiders everywhere. There are literally like thousands of spiders everywhere. And I would walk through a spider web and scream because I was imagining, like a scary monster on my face about to consume me. And so the feeling of a spider web, that sensory experience of a spider web on my face or on my body, I would have a very negative reaction to it. So what happened throughout my life for a long time before I overcame that fear is every time I felt like had some sort of spider web on me, even if I didn't, I would have a I'd conditioned myself to have a very strong response, a huge fear response. And I would start to feel itchy and I would start to feel uncomfortable. I wouldn't always scream because I'm an adult and I have to behave like an adult, but I would act very uncomfortably, and that was a
Yeah.
conditioned response to a sensation that I felt in the body. Now, that's true for all of us. When we have sensations we don't like, if we build a negative relationship with them, it's going to be more likely that we'll experience that even when there isn't a spider web, even when there isn't a cause for that sensation. Our brain may think there is the cause, but instead, actually, it's saying something else feels off. Or you thought there was a spider web because you walked through these woods before, but there actually wasn't this time. But I'm still feeling it because my brain is scared. So that sensory experience, the brain is powerful enough to give us that sensory experience in the absence of the spider web or of something structurally wrong in our body. So we can have symptoms like long COVID symptoms without actually even ever having COVID, which is really interesting. There's a lot of research on that people are testing
Wow.
positive for long COVID without ever even having COVID. So it shows you that your brain is so powerful as to be able to present symptoms to you in the absence of something tangibly going on. Now, that doesn't mean anyone's making it up. To be very clear, like that doesn't mean anybody's making these symptoms up. We are experiencing them in the body. It's just that our brain is misinterpreting signals. And so we are just responding to those signals that our brain is experiencing and misinterpreting. It's not our fault. So I want to be clear. Some people think like, you're telling me this is all in my head. No, it's not. Well, technically everything in reality is all in our head. Our experience is entirely in our head. Without our heads, we wouldn't be able to experience life. But that doesn't mean anybody's making these sensory experiences up. So Raylan, I am
Mm.
rambling on here. So you can cut me off at any point. But this is like the first thing we want to talk to people about is sensory experiences and how people respond to them. So when somebody comes to me and they're like, fatigue is destroying me, I can't do anything, the first thing I'm going to do is talk to them about how they respond to fatigue, which sounds really frustrating because fatigue is terrible, of course.
Yeah.
Fatigue involves so many different things, of course. We use that term generally, but it involves discomfort, it involves pain, it involves like weakness, it involves inability to move, all those things. But we want to just talk about how you're responding to it. And from there, we're going to understand the relationship we have with that negative stimuli.
And how should people be responding to these sensations? What is
Oh,
the
man.
most beneficial way?
Yeah. And so I learned this both through all like the research I've done and also my own experience doing long meditation retreats. Like since I was 21, I've done these 10-day meditation retreats in silence where you sit and just meditate for 12 hours a day. They're insane. But you learn there to every possible sensation you experience in the body, what we want to do, what we're working towards. And this is impossible to achieve 100%, to be clear. But what we're working towards is responding to it objectively. just being able to observe to a sensation, which is where meditation comes in, because meditation is all about not responding, not reacting to thoughts or not reacting to what's going on in our body. So, how should people respond? With neutrality. Is that easy? Absolutely not. And if somebody told me that when I was in the height of like symptoms, I would want to punch them in the face. So I understand how frustrating that can be. But what we're
Mm.
working towards is responding to sensory experiences in the body from a neutral place.
Do you have any tools or hacks that you give people to help them so when they're suffering and feeling these uncomfortable things, because it's not
Right.
just it's like I'm going to be neutral. Okay, I'm neutral now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you learn how to do that and can teach people, let me know, because that would be amazing. If you could learn how to do it, it's so awesome. So there's various tools in the context of pain reprocessing therapy. We talk about somatic tracking, which is a meditation for the body, and it's just literally experiencing a sensation in the body and practicing not reacting to it cognitively, not thinking, "Oh crap, here it comes," or "Oh no, my day's going to be ruined," or "Oh, I'm not going to be able to do this thing next week." Just sitting with the sensation and seeing if we can observe the thoughts and not attach onto them, which there are various examples of that online. I could go into that more if you think it would be useful. But even more than just in the context of pain reprocessing therapy, I think the whatever success I've had as a therapist myself has been partially because of my inclination to be a little goofy. So when I'm with sitting with a client and things are really tough, the first of all, I don't want to minimize what they're going through. Of course, I want to validate and experience how tough things are, but I want to make sure we're not inadvertently making it worse by thinking this is the most serious thing in the world and we have to take it very seriously. If we can allow some levity, some lightness in the room when we're experiencing some difficult sensation, that's a great step towards changing the relationship we have. So instead of, "Oh man, I woke up today and I've got just like achiness all over my body. I'm just going to stay in bed and think about how achy I am." Can we make a small, subtle shift? And again, this isn't going to change everything, but this will be a start of the change of a relationship. Can I watch that silly comedy special that I wanted to watch while I'm laying in bed so that at least I'm not just spending time thinking about how awful this is to feel the way that I am? Can I use this time to read a book? Can I use this time to write a letter to somebody? Can I do something that changes the relationship a tiny bit? Now, again, I'm not saying that's a cure all. Don't get me wrong. That's a very small thing. But that's what I'd encourage when somebody's in the worst possible places. Don't do something to dwell in it. Let's do something just to make you feel even momentarily better, even if that's like eat ice cream or whatever it is. Like, let's give yourself the space to just feel momentarily better and distance yourself from that relationship. It's not a long term fix, and there'd be other things that I'd want to change as we did that long term. But in the short term, be kind to yourself. This is where a lot of self compassion works comes
Mhm.
in. Anyway, I could keep rambling on here, but hopefully that sort of answers your question.
Yeah, it's interesting as you're talking because every person I talk to, I understand things a little bit better and I understand my own journey a little bit better. I was just thinking about
Same.
because I had yeah, like little light bulbs still for 6 years. This
Mhm.
is why I was saying I don't recommend my book that I wrote 6 years ago because I unless you wanna hear my story, but beyond that, I didn't
Which is
understand,
a valuable story.
yeah. But when my symptoms would be at their worst, all
Mhm.
of my fixing myself attempts went out the window. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know why I had this strategy, but I knew all I could do was put on Netflix. It was usually Big Bang Theory or something that I knew that I loved, and I loved the characters, and I would binge watch it. And sometimes I couldn't even open my eyes. I would just listen to it. But that's how I got through those big symptom flares was always just
Yes. Yes.
switch over into something funny until it passes. But
Yes. But I love that, and again, that's not to say, like, Big Bang Theory cured you, but
yeah,
that is to say that it made
oh,
those
if only.
very difficult times if only Big
Yeah.
Bang Theory. Oh, man. Those actors would be getting even more money.
Oh my goodness.
But that just made it a bit more bearable for you, because what happens is oftentimes people experience symptoms are like, "How can I get out of this as fast as I can?" Or
Mm.
what can I do to fix this in this moment?" And the reality is sometimes the fixing it behavior upregulates our nervous system and puts us into a state of fight or flight. We're like, I have to get
Mm.
rid of this because the sensation is so bad, which actually makes the sensation even worse.
Mhm.
So we have to kind of treat those symptoms sometimes just like a flu, where you're like, well, there's nothing I can do here. My body has to fight this. All
Yeah.
the flu medication in the world actually doesn't cure somebody of the flu. We have to just allow our bodies to raise the temperature, fight off that virus. And if we try to intervene, it oftentimes makes it worse.
Which is another interesting thing that people understandably are sometimes having trouble wrapping their heads around because
Yeah.
more and more I'm hearing in recovery stories and from, people like yourself and in Alan Gordon's book, The Way Out, and many other sources is the importance of joy, the importance of
Yes.
some happiness in your life. And
Yeah.
if you want to get better, like treat this as a priority, but also stop fixing yourself. So
Which is so hard. It's so complicated when somebody
yeah.
says that. Yes.
Yeah. So how would you explain that balance between we've got all these tools, but maybe don't use them so much?
Well, what commonly happens is people show up to this space. They found this space of like, okay, here's some what we might call mind body healing or healing through like a neuroscientific perspective. They show up and they're like, great, I'm going to use the exact same tools I have used to get ahead in my career or to
Yeah.
fight tooth and nail to get out of this situation, and I am just going to push as hard as I can to get out of this. When the
Yeah.
pushing in and of itself is why our body and our mind are giving us these signals that maybe it's too much. The job that I was working in, I was not liking it. And I was forcing myself to work extra long days as hard as I possibly could to feel okay. And feel good enough at my job, I should say. I wanted to feel like I was the best person there, which meant that I needed to keep pushing as hard as I possibly could.
Hmm.
I was using, well, and then I was feeling terrible and wondering why I was doing that. So let me pause here because I want to phrase this better. If we use the same drive to get out of our ailments, the same drive that got us into our ailments, it's not going to change things. So we have to switch over to a new way of doing something. I remember uh, in speaking of being in Alan Gordon's class, he knew that I was capable of like overcoming my own symptoms pretty quickly. Not quickly, shouldn't say that, but he knew that I had the capacity like innately when I chose to not do the extra credit at the end of a semester because I was like, you know what, actually, I've got more important things to do, which ended up being going on a family vacation. And he was like, that is wild. He was like, I don't relate to that whatsoever. You should be showing more drive. And I was like, I have a lot of drive, but it kicked in at some point. My brain said, wait,
Yeah.
if I actually put in this effort to do this extra credit, it's going to tire me out even more and I'm going to feel worse. So I need to just let go and live with the A minus or whatever grade I got in that class. I don't remember, which I probably could have gotten an A plus, but I didn't. At the time it was grad school, and what does it matter? I want to give myself the space and freedom to feel a little bit better right now. Am I answering your question? I don't know if I am.
You are. And I'm right now, I'll admit, calculating while you're speaking how much I would pay to have this little video clip sent back to me in time to when I first got MECFS. I was seeing a very well meaning functional doctor who helped or
Mm,
worked with me a lot. And he said to me in one of my first visits, I was a very much go getter, overachiever, type A type
yeah.
person, nonstop going. And he said, what got you into this is what's going to get you out of this. And then he gave me my list
Mm,
of 9,000 things to fix. And then I actually just started getting worse. So it's
yeah.
just like,
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's
I just,
intense.
yeah. So I just these simple insights. And this is what most of us think, though. Like, go at it with everything you've got. This is
Yeah.
how you get
Totally.
past this. There's no way relaxing, smelling some flowers, finding some joy, and watching the squirrels is the
Yeah.
path to what feels like might be killing me. Because
Right. Right.
it can be so intense what people are going through, and the symptoms so severe.
For sure.
Yeah,
And
it's
and to be clear, like there is a balance there between like
yeah,
working on some tools. I mean, it's not just like all just watching the squirrels, as much as that sounds amazing.
yeah,
But we can't be working the same way that that brought us into
yeah.
this state. So yeah, I'm sorry you had that experience with that practitioner.
Yeah, I'm grateful though because the rest of the doctors were completely dismissing me. So just having a doctor that believed me and said, "I'm going to work with
Yes.
you and we're going to figure this out," it kept me going. Didn't have the
Yeah.
answers, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's more than
Yeah.
more than a lot of people got. So
Yeah.
a lot of what we talk about with recovery from these conditions is about our thoughts. It's about our approach to things. It's our mindset. And a lot of people reach out to me or I see in the comments and they say, I don't feel like I think quite the same as other people, or I know that my brain isn't wired the same as a lot of people. And I'm not sure because of these, whether it's, ADD or all these different things that people make them unique and how their brains work. They're like, I'm not sure I can do this when it requires on my thoughts. So, what
Yeah.
does it mean for people facing or living like that with that?
Yeah, the neuroscience of cognition, which just means like the science of thought, how we understand that is really fascinating because, until I became a therapist, I thought everyone thought exactly the way I did. I just assumed. I was like, oh, yeah, of course. Like the way my brain thinks is exactly the way everybody else's does, which is not true. It's just not true.
Mhm.
Our brains all operate slightly differently based on all of the input that we've had over our life, including like genetic predisposition towards things, but also just the way that we were raised, how we watched our parents or our caregivers behave, how they would process things verbally also informs the way we think. So, what happens with a lot of us is we don't even realize that the way we think might be informing our body, might be informing how our body feels, might be influencing how our body feels. One of the specialties that I have that is very much related to working with people dealing with chronic symptoms is obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, that sounds really scary to people, but a lot of us have tendencies towards OCD without even realizing it. So, a lot of us can have obsessive thinking and not be diagnosable as OCD. But in the chronic symptom community, my hunch is 30 to 40% of people have obsessive thought. It's a really high percentage. And I feel like they're
Yeah.
wildly, vastly undiagnosed with that. And then again, to be clear to listeners, this does not mean like, oh, you have OCD. What this means is that your brain might switch into a gear and get obsessive about certain things. And I think most people on the planet can relate to that at certain points. If you are afraid
Mhm.
of something enough, if you are worried about something enough, you will ruminate on it. You will think over and over and over and over again. And let's just say, Raylan, if I knew what you were worried about right now, or let's say, let's hypothetical, you were worried about interviewing me for whatever reason this weekend. If I was with you all weekend and I was just like, oh, you should be really scared. This is really dangerous. It could be a terrible interview. It could be really bad. It could go horribly wrong. Oh, Daniel could scream at you. If I
Mhm.
said that to you for 48 hours straight, you would feel stressed.
Yeah.
It's your body would react to it. Your body would
Yeah.
start reacting in whatever ways your body demonstrates stress. Maybe it would be fatigue showing up. I don't know. But if that's those are the thoughts we're having. So obviously, I wasn't following you around this past weekend whispering those things in your ear. But if that's what you were thinking, then your brain, excuse me, if that's what you're thinking nonstop, then your body is going to respond. And a lot of us don't realize that, oh, the way I think is going to inform the amount of stress or anxiety or ease that I have in my life. So, what we oftentimes do when we're working with somebody is start to understand their thought process a little bit more. So, like, how often do you catastrophize, which is, just means how often do you think of the worst case scenario? Catastrophizing really causes us a lot of stress. Again, if I followed you around the rest of your life and I was like, oh, you better not get in that car, you might die, or you better not do this, you could, that this elevator could fall. All scary thoughts that we've probably all had in our heads, but if they're happening to us constantly, it's like we're living in a horror movie. Look at that. What a massive amount of stress to be living under.
So, what does that mean in terms of eliminating symptoms when your brain is wired to do this?
Yeah. What we used to say, and we don't use it quite as much, but we used to say often is, and it's still helpful, is that fear is the fuel for pain. So the more we are in an agitated, anxious, fearful place, the more our nervous system, our central nervous system, is upregulated, which increases our somatic sensitization. It's a fancy way of saying like it just makes us feel more pain or more discomfort or more fatigue. And so when we reduce fear and anxiety, we experience less of those things. So I always used to joke like the laid back surf. I lived in Los Angeles for a long time. Like the
Yeah.
laid back surfer who's like smoking pot on the beach, he's not coming into my office because like he's not sitting there worried about a bunch of stuff. He's just like, whatever, man. It doesn't like he doesn't, he's not having a lot of fear go through his head.
Yeah.
That person is not anxious about their day. They're just surfing and riding the waves. I'm stereotyping, of course, but I just mean when we're in a
Mhm.
relaxed,
Yeah.
chill place, we're not going to be upregulated and we will not be feeling our like the sensory information from our body as acutely.
It's funny to hear that explanation because I just last week I interviewed two people that each had PhDs in some type of physics. One of them worked at
Cool.
NASA, the other one was also an athlete. And I was telling my husband, I
Oh my
said,
god, what are you doing having this schmuck on here? These people is incredible.
but I was saying, again, stereotyping a bit, but I never show up in interviews and I'm looking across at someone who says, "Yeah, well, generally, like I've been unemployed for a long time. Generally, I just like smoke dope and play video games all day." I'm like, "That's never who I'm interviewing." Of course,
Right.
the whole spectrum exists, but and initially
Yes.
for me it was very validating because I thought there was so much, not I thought, there was so much stigma around my condition. I used to say we
Yeah.
might as well call it crazy lazy syndrome. It seemed like I was making it
Oh,
up and I just didn't want to work, and it was so
yeah.
validating to be like, oh my goodness, like look at all these other people. Clearly not everyone is just choosing to get out of bed again.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of, I mean, so often in this, I mean, we can get a little bit more meta here, but in this capitalist world, we have obsessive thinking is rewarded because if you're a problem solver, if you're a fixer, if you're someone that's like, I see a problem, I'm gonna fix that problem, and it will help a lot of people. Uh, that's a wonderful capitalist thing because you're going to make some money off of
Mhm.
that kind of things. Being an obsessive person at work, being somebody who is going to do, other people might go home at 5 o'clock. You're going to stay till 6 to work extra to fix all the stuff that didn't get done at the day. It's rewarded. So that's good. So then we get a feedback loop of, oh, the harder I push, the more intensely I think about things, the more obsessive I get about this stuff, it will be rewarded. So I should do that. And again, there's benefit to that to a certain extent, but not if we take it too far.
Yeah. So one of the things I've been wanting to ask you about, because you've had the personal experience, the professional experience, you work with so many people. And I imagine there are cases where you see people move through this more quickly and other times
Mm,
where people get stuck. So have you noticed any trends in what helps people either speed up or slow down their recovery? And I know everyone's got their own timeline, so it's not,
yeah.
there's no
When that's the
there's no
number one
clock.
question. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
that's the number one question when people are like, "Hey, how long until I get better?" Is we say like,
Yeah.
"I can't tell you this. I wish I could. I really do. Believe me, really do." But everybody's different. That said, we're looking for co-occurring stuff that might make somebody in a situation that would cause them to feel, let's say, less safe in their normal life. So if you came to me and you were like, "Hey, Daniel, I really want to work on CFS, or I really want to work on back pain," and you tell me that my home life is pretty bad. I'm living with an abusive partner. I have a pretty intense, like, let's say, eating disorder. I've got a lot of attachment trauma from my past, like a parent left at a very young age, and I've got a string of abusive relationships, or what have you. If we're going through all that stuff, what that says to me is, okay, there's a lot to work on here, and also it's going to take some time. You're not in a safe place in your life, generally speaking, and that's what we need to find more safety in your life in order to find healing. So we're looking for those kinds of things. And again, people get dismayed when they hear that, oh my gosh, well, my parents are divorced, does that mean that I'm never going to feel better? No, that's not what we're saying. We have to kind of target what we're working on and be patient with ourselves in terms of overcoming whatever attachment traumas we have, and like emotional, let's call them like emotional wounds from our past that might be keeping us in an upregulated place. It might make it hard for us to connect with other people. And we know through neuroscience, connecting with other people is what downregulates us when it's done well. But when we connect with other people in a kind of scary way, it makes us feel a lot worse. Symptoms can flare. So to answer your question, it's just there's a lot of stuff we look for. But if you show up and you're like, you know what, actually, like I've done a lot of work, I've done a lot of therapy in the past, and things are pretty good in my life. I'm in a healthy partnership, or I'm single, and things are really easy for me at this point. Then there's greater likelihood that things are going to move quickly. Also, I have been wrong a million times in my career, and people have had all kinds of trauma, all kinds of things, and then
Yeah.
the research demonstrated this, all this stuff, and have felt better in like 3 sessions. So, so I really wish I could tell you there was a rule, but there isn't. I just part of the research. I had a client come to me, and I came to the research lead, Yoni Ashar is his name, and I was just like, I'm not sure about this one. This is going to be a tough case for me. And then within 3 sessions, he was like 100% better, and I didn't even know we had 8 sessions we were supposed to fill. And I was like, I don't know what to do with the rest of these sessions. So take everything I say with a grain of salt because
Ugh.
every individual is unique.
I love that so much. And it's one of the reasons I work to put such a broad variety of people and approaches here because there's so much. Would you agree that we don't know more than we know about this?
For
We've learned
sure.
so
Oh my
much,
gosh.
but
We know a
Yeah.
ton, but there's still so much more that we don't know for sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it's we
Yeah.
all wanna follow a specific recipe, so we'll read a
Yes.
book or see a specific person and they're
Yeah.
like, "They say it's these 3 things," but then
Yeah,
someone else says,
exactly.
"No, no, you need to really focus on this thing," and then someone else says, "No,
Totally.
no, it's really this thing," and it can be
Yeah.
very confusing. But
So confusing. Yeah.
what I say is that, like, they're all right in their own way and they're all wrong in their own way. Everyone
Totally.
sees through their lens. So just trust yourself and trust your gut and pull those pieces. If the past trauma piece doesn't fit for you, then don't put your focus there. If whatever it is,
Totally.
yeah.
And of course, this is my bias because I am a therapist, so I look through things through a psychological and therapeutic lens. But what we do know through, you know, 80 plus years of psychotherapy research is the relationship between the patient and the therapist is one of the
Mm,
healthiest and most important healing factors that take place. So when we're working with people, we tell them, like, what focus on just being here with me right now, and what comes up, we'll work through. And we have tools and we have a process that we're going to take you through. But really, truly, just like relaxing into the process and building that relationship with a therapist or with somebody you trust, whether it be an MD or whatever, a PT, doesn't matter. That's going to be huge. So feeling safe with the people around you is really massive. That's a really important part of it.
yeah, that makes sense. Something else that I'm excited to get to talk to you about is the Curable app because it's one of the things that initially taught me a lot about this. I've
Oh,
used the app
good.
a lot. I even suddenly had back pain as an adult that I never had, and I used the Curable app to get rid of it, and it got rid of it so
Nice.
fast.
Oh, I love that.
And so many people I interview talk about how it was a big part of their recovery journey, and I recommend it a lot in videos. So I know you're involved with that. So tell us about this.
Curable is the app that you can use on your phone that just walks you through a lot of tools and tips about how to recover from various chronic symptoms. I mean, there are literally like walkthrough tools to like teach you different meditations, to teach you different ways of like you working with your thoughts and your emotions. There are also there's tons of video content of various experts talking like lecturing essentially about like, hey, here's some content that would be useful for you. There's also a lot of
Mhm.
Q&A stuff happening there, so people can come up, can say like, hey, I've got back pain, I've got head pain, I've got fibromyalgia, I've got whatever. How can I be helped here? So there's a lot of that. I feel lucky enough. I do a show called Healing Help with a woman named Rachel Amundsen, and she and I show clips of us basically doing therapy, and then we talk to people about afterwards. We do like a live Q&A where people can ask questions about like, why did you do this, or why did you do that, or what's useful about this tool. So we do that, and that's all up on the app that you can see. And I also do some lectures and stuff. I've done a fair amount of content lectures speaking specifically about pain and how to overcome it, or symptoms, chronic symptoms, and how to overcome them.
Yeah, and I love how to see how it's been evolving because initially my understanding was a strong focus on solely on chronic pain.
Yeah,
But even with that, I was still interviewing people saying, "Well, I just shifted it to be for my CFS and it
totally.
still worked." So
Yeah.
I know it's evolved since then and we talk about many more symptoms.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You hear me correct myself a lot, partially just because, like, depending on the audience I'm talking to, the right
Yeah.
word feels right. But honestly, it's about all chronic symptoms. That's the
Yeah.
honest truth. Is that app is great for all chronic symptoms.
Yeah. And I do have a link I can put in the video description that gives people 6 weeks for free. So if you want to check it
Oh,
out, you can learn a lot in 6 weeks.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Sometimes
tell
that's
us
all you
more.
need.
Yeah, really, you can learn a lot in six
Right.
weeks.
Yeah.
And then you also tell us about the work that you do with patients at your center. What do you have available for people there?
Yeah, so my center, we're made up of a team of therapists. There's 9 therapists. We see people all over the world. We're entirely focused on helping people overcome chronic symptoms. So we have, if you're interested in working with us, you can go to our website, which is mindbodytherapycenter.org, mindbodytherapycenter.org, and there's a lot of information on there, including some like free content and stuff. Even if you don't want to see a therapist, there's some good tools that you can check out there, including a somatic tracking exercise that I lead people through. So maybe that's helpful. But if, in case you are interested in working with a coach or a therapist on overcoming these symptoms, you can reach out to us there. And we do have a little bit of a wait list right now, but we're happy to try and help people however we can. And
That is
actually, oh, I
abs.
should mention this right now because hopefully when this comes out, we regularly have interns, graduate interns working with us, and I love being able to offer that because that means we can offer low fee, low cost coaching with people because I know therapy it can be expensive. So I like being able to have
Yeah.
the opportunity to offer that low cost for people.
Oh my goodness, this is so incredible. Still
Mm.
every day my head explodes that all of this support exists for people who are going through this. For
Yeah.
decades and decades there was really just nothing, and now
I know. It used to
we
be
have
I remember when I started doing this work at one point there were so we all looked at each other and we were like, maybe we're the only 40 people in the world doing this work, you know? And now there's 40,000. So it's great. It's amazing.
yeah, out of how many, yeah, billions, but yeah, we're
Right.
getting there.
Yeah. We're getting there. We're getting there. Yeah.
This has been
Uh,
incredible. Of course, all of this will be linked in the video description. So, people watching, listening, do yourself a favor, go and check some of that out. Daniel, like I said, I could keep you here all week. I have so many questions. Hopefully, I'll have you back one day, but really appreciate all the work that you're doing. And thanks for being here.
of course, I'd love to come back sometime. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the work you're doing. Again, we're part of the 40,000, hopefully making a difference in the world, right? That's what we all want to
Yeah,
do.
absolutely. And if you're watching this interview and this approach resonates and you want to hear from more experts in the field, I'm going to link a playlist here that has a lot of incredible people like Dr. Howard Schubner and Nicole
Yes.
Sachs and Dr. David Clark, and just like you said, so many people out there trailblazing and really making a difference. So,
And they're the real OGs. They're the good stuff. You got to check out their videos. So
thank you again, Daniel. This has been amazing. Thanks to those of you watching, and hope to see you in one of these next videos.
have a good one, Raylan. Thank you.